Okay.
Okay.
Starting.
Alrighty. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Molinex. I'm the Executive Director of the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the MPO. I welcome you all here this evening to this first of 3 public meetings on our Regional Safety Action Plan. We're in Martinsburg tonight. Next week, we'll be in Charlestown and in Hagerstown. If you're not familiar with an MPO is, that's okay. We're not very well known. There's about 400 of us across the country. And we're created wherever the U.S. Census designates an urban area of more than 50,000 people. So we are federally funded and designated regional transportation planning agency that covers Berkeley and Jefferson counties in West Virginia, as well as Washington County, Maryland. We're here tonight to talk about traffic safety. Yeah. So this is our website is herpmpo.com. You can go there anytime, find out more information about our organization. Our draft regional safety action plan, we'll probably refer to it as the SAP tonight, is posted there. We have to accompany the draft safety action plan, which we're going to cover tonight, its contents. We have an executive summary that is in the form of what's called a story map, which is an online, it's sort of interactive web map. It kind of scrolls through almost like you're reading a newspaper, but it has interactive parts to help maybe instead of reading 100 pages, you only have to read 10 pages and you can get the gist of it. And then a lot of the data that we're going to be talking about tonight, if you really like data and you really like maps, we have a separate interactive map, web map online that's just the data itself. So you can click data on and off, you can zoom in, zoom around, search for addresses, etc. Okay. And then the meeting agenda so we're going to give an overview of the safety action plan. We're going to talk about how it's structured, the analysis we did for safety in the region, the results of that analysis, the action plan that we have framed that we're presenting to you for your comment, and what the next steps are for the plan. All right. And then before we go any further, I'd like if Michaela, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Michaela McDonough. I'm a transportation planner with the MPO.
And then work on the safety action plan was put together by guided by a great group of consultants, which includes.
I'm Jim Frazier. I'm with Michael Baker International, and I lead our project team. Fears and Peers is another sub-consultant who worked on this with us as well.
All right. So how this came about is that the MPO funded this study, which started in August of last year. Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, wait, that's 2023.
So our timeline's in elliptical. So we started last summer assessing transportation safety policy in both Maryland and in West Virginia. We'll probably lean a little bit more heavily toward the discussion on West Virginia this evening based on where we are. We had a stakeholder group that was comprised of folks from municipalities, from counties, planners, engineers, folks from TOH, SHA, law enforcement, some elected officials as well. We presented our findings to them. We did a pretty wide-ranging public survey. Nope. Okay, he's just checking the card catalog. And we use those results to help refine what we call our high injury network, which we're going to talk a lot about tonight. And from the high injury network, that helped us develop projects and programs and prioritize what in this area is the most important roads and crash types to focus on for safety purposes, to alleviate and reach a vision zero of no fatalities in our area. And then right now we are, that draft plan's out for public comment. We're doing these public meetings and hearing what folks have to say about the plan so far. And we have received some comments. So, and then the policy board that our MPO is comprised of, which includes county commissioners, mayors, and DOH personnel. They meet on May 15th and will consider whether or not based on this plan and comments received by the public, they would like to adopt the plan. So that's where we are in the scheme of things. So the plan overview, there's 6 chapters, 3 appendices. So we talk about the introduction, how the plan was developed, our safety story, what that means to our region, the importance of Vision Zero, how it fits in with the national strategic safety goals set out by US DOT, how we can focus efforts on making a change, specifically what actions to take, how you evaluate the performance of a safety action plan, and we'll talk about monitoring over time, killed and severely injured crashes, considerations per percent reduction in certain crash types, whether it's single vehicle, roadway departure, as well as crashes in transportation disadvantaged areas. So those areas, they're identified historically as either areas of persistent poverty, areas of disadvantaged demographics, where there has been a historic underinvestment in federal resources and funds over time. And then how that's evaluated. So, and then, yeah, there's some technical memorandums and countermeasures. So countermeasures are, they're typically when you have a certain type of problem on a highway or a certain type of crash issue that you're dealing with, a countermeasure is usually, it's almost like you look in a catalog and you say, okay, if I have a problem with X, I flip over here and here are a couple of countermeasures that might fit within the context of this road or this land use that might help address it. And so we have listed some of those more frequently used countermeasures, some of which have been used in this area to help improve safety. And then technical memorandums. Those have to do with crash types, crash fatality rates, things like that. Yep. Yeah. So, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna let you go.
I was gonna let you keep going.
You're probably like, he's only gonna do 2 slides.
He's doing great.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I'll let Jim take over from here, and I'll sit down.
Well, welcome everyone. As Matt was getting into on the federal side,
I did the welcome and the liturgy.
Yeah, the safety crashes, the federal government adopted a net zero vision for fatality. So when can that happen? And the safety, I don't want to call it a crisis. It's really a national crisis because of the targets that they have been setting haven't been met. And there's still a lot of fatalities. There's still a lot of serious injuries. But they established this safety system approach. And as part of that, they came out with some guidelines to say, okay, we have a pot of money set aside for safety improvements, and we want you to assess them using this approach. So if you see on the right there is, safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, or post-crash care. So those are the type of core elements that we'll be using we use throughout the plan, and we'll be showing you tonight. All right. So what's the need for the safety action plan? And the good thing about, we might hinted to about data in our interactive maps that the crash data collected by the state and by the police departments have become very, very good and useful. We're able to take those databases, be able to plot those, look at the different types of crashes, and if possible, the fault of that crash. So just to give you an example, in 2022, there were 4,680 non-interstate crashes in the region. And of that, 137 resulted in a person being killed or severely injured. And so we're going to focus on that 137 as an example. So KSI, we're referring to that as that stands for killed or severely injured. Obviously, you have a lot of fender benders and everything else. Could be a safety issue, but it's not, the priority is to reduce these KSIs. And it's not just automobiles. If you look at the bar chart on the right, you see only 68% were autos. Motorcycles account for 18%, and then you also have bike and pedestrian, more pedestrian than bicycle accidents. So,
And the reason that we're focusing, as Jim's saying, on non-interstate crashes is that you can just jump back one slide,
sure.
Jim. So this, so the safe system approach, what came out of that in November of 21 was, this was birthed out of the IIJA, so the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was the federal surface transportation bill that was passed at the time. It's also sometimes referred to as the bipartisan infrastructure law. And it created within it a new program that was called Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A. Sometimes you might hear it referred to. And SS4A is all about safety on the roads for every type of mode of transportation that might use the road. Well, interstates are restricted access highways, right? Pedestrians, bicyclists, they're typically, I mean, I guess you're a pedestrian if you're out of the car on the interstate, but they're typically not permitted. And so that's why we're focusing on the non-interstate roads, because those have all those modes, and that new program, it allows for a lot of new discretionary funding or program funding for projects that previously weren't available. So we want to take full advantage of that here in our region. Okay.
And that leads right into this Safe Streets for All, SS4A. The start of it, to be able to be eligible for SS4A grants, is to have a safety action plan. This plan we are completing satisfies that requirement. So any jurisdiction, county, I don't want to say everybody, but it can go down to jurisdiction level, can apply for demonstration project grants and implementation project grants. Demonstration projects are, you know, it says $100,000 to $10 million. So it's more of a smaller type, no capacity enhancements, no digging per se, but just some safety improvements along a certain corridor or segment of roads. Implementation grants are the full, you know, a full redesign. You think of some of those complete street type of ideas that would qualify for an implementation grant. The federal government, like Matt's talked about the BIL and the infrastructure law that passed, we're in year 3 already of that law. So the funding comes out every year. So right now we're in year 3 of that funding. So there's 2 more additional years that you can apply for these type of grants. And the grant applications, the way we designed our plan is they provided a checklist of the requirements, and all we're showing here is that the left side is the grant application requirements, and on the right side says, okay, if you need this information, look at this chapter. You can pull it right out of this plan to satisfy your application. All right, going into the plan structure. As part of developing this plan, obviously we had the project team, but we had a pretty robust stakeholder group, and we also did a pretty thorough public survey. So those 3 inputs, those 3 elements fed into the information and the recommendations and the guidelines to get us to this point. All right. And then the elements we've discussed already. So I'm going to show you some of the results of our survey. I don't know if you all took that survey, which is good. It was a MetroQuest survey, and the participation was overwhelming. For an MPO this size, to get this many participants is fantastic. And 574 total participants. Just some stats around that: 50-50 male, female. The majority were 45 and older, and most were white. 7% were other race or ethnicity. And the chart on the right, and I don't know if you're getting some of the things, you know, there was a Panhandle Live, is that the TV station? Did an interview with Matt.
Radio, yeah.
Oh, radio
Yeah.
station. So, and they also is pretty active in social media, posting on LinkedIn and Facebook. And so we put stars on there when Matt posted you know, hey, we have this survey out, look at it. And so you could see the responses hike with each time he put out a notice. So it's a very effective use of social media. And then what we're showing here is that it's working.
Should say too, that that was optional for applicants to provide that information. So
Yes.
that does, some do not have to provide that information to submit a survey. But those that chose to, that's what we learned.
Yeah. One of the questions we asked, we gave them 10 different options here of safety concerns. And we asked them to rank them, particularly the top 3. And as a result of that, you can see traffic congestion, aggressive driving, and distracted driving were the 3 highest concerns related to safety in the region. Other ones that were, you know, still concerns, commercial vehicles was definitely high. Unsafe intersections, which, you know, that relates to some of the crash data that we're witnessing. Some intersections are obviously more of a problem area than others. Poor road maintenance, drunk driving, lack of crosswalks, lack of bike lanes, that type of thing. So, so those were the results of the safety concerns from the survey. And then we asked them about bike pedestrian safety. The first note we have is more than half of the participants walk or bike in the area. And the 5 contributing factors of safety problems, distracted driving, high speeds, lack of separation of the bike lanes or the shoulder and the travel lanes, and then road design itself and the maintenance of those roads. And over half of the participants want to see safer designed roads with lower speeds. Then we asked, how would you feel choosing to bike, or what would make you feel safer for bike and walking? The highest one response was safer designed roads. And then followed by stronger laws and enforcement. Right. And then we looked at driver safety. What is the nature of the incident? Check all that apply. And this was failure to obey intersection signals, distracted driving, not crossing at an intersection, speeding, that type of thing. And so 66% of the participants have experienced a safety incident within the last year. The majority of the participants were driving when the incident occurred, and half of the incidents were near miss, speeding, or distracted driving pedestrians. So that was one of the things we tried to capture here. Yeah, we have the accident data. We don't get near miss data. So we asked the question, have you been involved in a near miss? And this is where, when we asked them to put markers on the map, the near misses, 85% of the participants experienced a near miss within the past 6 months, and 89% of the people said they've experienced multiple near misses in a specific location. So a total, keep in mind too, the 574 participants, we had over 1,500 map markers. So that's an average of 3 markers per participant. So it was a very, like I said, very well participated survey, and we were very happy with the results that we received.
Mm-hmm. And even folks who didn't utilize MetroQuest, when you're a public agency, public comment period never stops, right? It's always on. So we received comments during that time, either by email, letter, or phone. We made sure it got worked into the system, so it was all tabulated collectively.
Okay, going into the safety analysis. First, we talked about reviewing the policy and doing a policy assessment where we identify relevant documents, populate a benchmarking tool and select top 5 benchmarking opportunities to help us develop the action plan. And first, I'm going to show you, keep in mind, the core element is that safe street, a safe street tool diagram we showed you. So safety culture, safety users, safe roadways, safe speeds. This is what we evaluated as strengths for the region. We have identifying corridors of concern. We know we have a list of corridors that we know, and in particular here, Edwin Miller, is that the exit 12?
Oh, Apple Harvest.
Apple Harvest, that's what I wanted to say. We know Apple Harvest has been a problem for a long time. We know it's under construction now, but that type of thing. So the MPO does track that, and dual highway up in Hagerstown is another one that has a lot of issues, a lot of improvements ongoing. So the funding, the TIP funds are programmed. There's 4 HSIP is the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So there's four corridors there that I've already identified for improvements. There's previous planning efforts. We've done a regional safety plan a few years ago. There's also, the Shepherdstown, Martinsburg Pike was a safety improvement. The long-range transportation plan has a lot of safety improvements and a lot of safety corridors identified in there as well. So the traffic safety, collision avoidance, enforcement. There are speed cameras up in Washington County. I know there's no speed cameras here, but there are. And Berkeley County has radar speed signs on 81 in school zones from previous safety campaigns, and then a crash review of the data. So we've also identified potential improvement areas. So leadership and commitment, there's no region-wide resolution supporting safety programs, nor committing to specific safety goals. There's limited meaningful engagement with populations that are traditionally underserved. The funding, the staff time, limited resources and support to apply to safety funding. And then there's limited opportunities to raise awareness with the public and stakeholders to create buy-in for safety programs, i.e. like that safety demonstration project or education programs. So there's some other ones there too, if you can look at. All right, going into the safety analysis, we have a lot of data inputs. Crash data was very, I guess we were very happy with the crash data now. We did 5 years worth of data, and the latest data set when we started the project was 2018 to 2022. We got all the roadway attributes, which is the traffic volume, speed limits, truck percentages, that type of thing. The municipal boundaries, equity areas that Matt talked about that are underserved. And then we also got population data. And then we went through did a trends analysis, looking at fatality rates on segments and corridors, and then looked at the different types of crashes. And then there's a list there of year, county, basically what's in the crash data itself. And what we do is we take that data and we develop what we call a high injury network. The high injury network are the highest scoring with the fatality rates and other concerns about the corridor. The higher weight is given. It's kind of a little model that we use, but higher weight is given to segments that have KSIs and VRUs. That's vulnerable road users. Both states, Maryland and West Virginia, developed a VRU plan and identified specific corridors in the region that are vulnerable for road users. And we're going to show you one of those as we get going through here. So, all right. This is what a map set looks like, and this is just a breakdown of the KSIs by mode. You have the pedestrians, bicycle, motorcycle, and then also vehicles. And the shaded areas are the disadvantaged areas that have been identified through the census. The interactive map, we do have that. If you want to, we can show you what it looks like if you're interested after this, after the presentation, and just to show you what type of data that we have in there. All right, some key findings from our safety analysis. Nearly 3 crashes per week resulted in a fatality or a severe injury. Motor vehicle collisions are the most common in the region, but VRU collisions have a higher rate of KSI, which sadly is expected. Single vehicles and head-on collisions are the most common when the collision resulted in a KSI. Roadways with 50 to 55 miles per hour speed limit account for only 3% of the roadways, not with talking non-interstate here, but account for 10% of the KSIs. Bicycle and pedestrian KSI crashes occur at a higher rate compared to other modes within the disadvantaged areas, which are more urbanized areas. And the fatal crash rate, including interstate crashes per 100,000 people for the region, is 11.5. Berkeley County has a higher fatality rate of 12.5. So the next step we did was develop what we call fact sheets. And this is an example of one of the fact sheets. We do have fact sheets for angle crash, every type of crash type. So this is single vehicle crashes. We have a map of where they were located. We also have this for angle crashes, bicycle and pedestrian crashes, and head-on collisions. So this gives you a few stats related to that crash type. Where we most commonly see these type of crashes, we actually have some roads like Apple Harvest Drive is on there, and then along the non-high injury network, which is the other areas that have high crash rates. And then there's some countermeasures too. This is what Matt was referring to. This toolbox of countermeasures. Federal Highways kind of lays them all out. So it gives you a good idea of how to correct some different things. They do it by type. So crashes with fixed objects, it gives you a different countermeasure to fix that. If it's a nighttime accident, you know how to fix that. And then speeding, way to control speeds a little better. So like I said, we have in the plan itself, there's like 5 of these. They're also in the story map. You can shift through those if you like. All right. So for our results, one is the developing of this high injury network. And then from that high injury network, we picked a few top corridors and actually went through a full process doing a full profile of that corridor. So first, the high injury network. This is the total high injury network. And then I know this is hard to see, and we could show you the plan lays it out a bit, but we do have some blowups. You can see Martinsburg's there, and looks like 45 route, the end of Route 9, and Route 11 through the city, and then Edward Miller Boulevard is also in the high injury network. So from that, we go into these corridor profiles. And I think I'm gonna get the one in Martinsburg here. This is for Edward Miller Boulevard, and it might be a little difficult to see. But the way we laid this out is, we reviewed the whole length of the corridor, identified where the crashes were, and then went back and then put potential countermeasures along that corridor. The bottom of it has some history. You have the collision history, how many fatalities were on this corridor, what's the collision pattern on these corridors. Like this one shows rear-ended signals and time of day of concentration. So we are getting more peak hour or night PM PM crashes, and there's also a lot of angle crashes. And knowing that roadway, all the different access points along that road, you can imagine that it's producing angle crashes. And then there's the planning references, and this is different plans that have been identified. There are some signal improvements identified that's already programmed for this corridor, the Lutz Avenue signal project and the Courthouse Drive signal project. So we know those are being implemented, and then the rest of it is different alternatives. So what the purpose of this is, it's not a conceptual design with specific countermeasures. What it is it's prepping for that next phase of design. So once it gets into the engineering phase and design phase, they can take this profile and then go ahead into a more detailed design and then implementation of those improvements. All right, then our action plan, the way we laid out our implementation priorities, we looked at operationalizing safety, educating road users, and then safe streets, and we go into details on ideas for each one of those in the plan. And then we have an evaluation and monitoring. We have a safety action committee the stakeholder group that we use this. Now we're recommending that you take that group and keep that committee going, and on an annual basis track these different types of metrics, including fatalities, serious injuries, non-motorized fatalities, and actually report that annually, and then update this plan at least every 5 years, because of obviously the crash data would be totally different at the 5-year mark. And then our next steps, this is just for the plan itself. Obviously, I put Matt's reference here. You can email comments to him directly. Also on his website, there's a comment box you can click, provide comments there. And just a timeline of where we are. We're in the public comment period. It's going to continue through May 14th. We have 3 meetings set up. This is the first one. We have 2 next week, one in Charlestown and then one in Hagerstown. And then the plan is to take the full plan with all the comments addressed to the his Interstate Council, which is the approval, and then the note 2 for SS4A applications. They're actually due implementations due May 16th. That's kind of difficult to do at this point, but the demonstration grants are actually due on August 29th, and hopefully at least we get one submitted from this plan. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, it takes a lot of buy-in, but
we haven't had a chance to talk, but that grant, that city decided they're just gonna do it.
Are they?
Yeah, they were like, we'll just do the pain.
Yeah.
Why do demonstration? I was like, well, sounds like we've already won the grant then, which is fine.
That was in Charlestown.
Yeah.
So we actually included a profile for that corridor that he's referencing. So, all right. So at this time, I'll open it up for any questions. And
yeah, I guess I'll just say, so from the safety aspect, when IIJA was passed, you can think of it as the feds. I'm greatly oversimplifying this, but became flush with money for infrastructure projects, had a huge budget for it. Local governments, state governments, maybe weren't there right at the same time. And it's resulted in a lot of interesting situations to try to take advantage of all these new programs. And what that is requiring or is necessitating for those groups that are nimble enough to see the opportunity and take advantage of it is to partner, right, and come up with creative ways to access or unlock these funds. And so it is the hope of the MPO, the small part that we play in the larger arena of transportation, is that by highlighting the high injury network in our area and showing those roads, those corridors that have the needs and the projects that happen, it might create opportunities where a city like Martinsburg or a county like Berkeley could work with a state like West Virginia, right? And come up with some ideas of potential projects along those corridors that they could apply grants for and take advantage of these funding. Because there's always funding for safety, right? This is not something new, you know. Jim talked about Highway Safety Improvement Program funds, HSIP, excuse me. Highway safety funds have been around forever. Everywhere, probably you could, if you bend it far enough, the logic you could use safety funds for something. But there's a lot of needs in our state. You know, there's steep slopes, there's slips, there's slides, you know, there's all kinds of things. There's rivers, there's floods, there's interstates. And so in our particular area, what we can do to either continue to demonstrate our need or show our opportunity, we want to continue to do that. So we're not left behind. I don't have to say this, you know, to you all residents who live in the Eastern Panhandle. I have to say it to our delegate who goes down to Charleston and knows this, but everybody outside the Eastern Panhandle thinks we're just the, you know, just the richest, most well cared for, whiniest, you know, part of the state. I grew up in Ravenswood. My mom is from South Charleston. My dad's from Franklin. So I know, you know, like I get it, but that's why you need the data when you deal with traffic highway engineers who are very data driven, and we can show this is what the data actually says. If you put aside your feelings about how the Eastern Panhandle is doing or its disposition, there are certainly needs in our area. And so this is actually what was the stat, Jim? Was it in the presentation on the high injury network? So again, if we take out the interstates, it was something like, it's something like, if you take out the interstates, 35%, isn't it, of all killed severely fatal. So 1 out of every 3 severely injured or fatal crash happens on one of these roadways in red. But it only accounts for like 3% of the whole roadway network.
Yeah, that stat was in there.
Yeah. So you see, you know, some familiar players if you live in the area. We talked about Apple Harvest. There's US 11, right? Part of Winchester Avenue, Queen Street running through town. Warm Springs Avenue, it looks like part of Mid-Atlantic Parkway, Route 9 out to Hedgesville, a small part of Hammonds Mill Road, part of US 11 up near Spring Mills, West Virginia 45, Martinsburg Pike, kind of near in the Blairton area, and parts of Airport Road I see down there as well. So yeah, anyway, we're happy to take any questions or comments you might have on anything that we discussed tonight or haven't talked about. Yes, sir.
I've got a whole bunch of questions, but I don't want to dominate the question session. But let me start off with the state legislature has passed laws for people that are texting or using a cell phone while driving, putting penalties on that. But I really don't see that having any impact. Do you have any suggestions at all? Evidently, this is a cultural thing. People get in the car and they text or they get their cell phone. But as far as a safe user thing, I see that driving every day is an issue. I was down on the interstate the other day, and there's a car weaving all over the road. I thought they were drunk, but no, they were on their cell phone. I just wondered, the legislature passed some laws, but I think it needs more than that, and I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I experience the same thing every time I had a stoplight, right? Either who's behind me or in front of me. If I look in my rear view or look up front, their eyes are down there looking at their phone. I almost feel like that something needs to be worked out at a higher level with the phone companies, that you know, I mean, it gets into some, I don't want to say privacy issues, but there's something about when you're in motion that it's not, your phone can't activate or has modified use. Like, you know, when you're driving, you can't connect your phone to Bluetooth. There's certain features that your devices are like, your emotions, so that I feel like there's going to have to be a technology solved to it, because you're right. It seems like we just can't keep our eyes and hands off of these, of the phone.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, the issue wasn't the phone, the issue was playing with the radio.
Yeah.
You'd be looking down the radio dial and you look up like, oh my golly, there's a tractor trailer.
Mhm.
But it's gotten worse now with cell phones and texting, and it's human nature. People get distracted, but
Yeah,
it's really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
it is. And
I've heard some good new radio, well, listen to me, I'm dating myself, I'm saying radio ads. But, you know, like the governor's highway safety program, I have heard some nice advertisements about, like, you know, the dangers of, like, it's very, because it's just like, by the time you hear this, you've looked down and you've run into something, and that's cost you these points and this, you know, all that. I don't know. It's a challenge though. I won't lie. Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you'd have some magic answer.
Oh,
Well,
If I
and
did,
you saw in
people will be lining out.
the survey results show that it's obvious, everyone sees it. Distracted driving is a problem, you know?
Well,
And-
interesting enough,
Yeah.
and we're working on, I'm working on legislation anyway, didn't pass this year, but we're still pushing on, under West Virginia law. If you have vehicular manslaughter, it's only a misdemeanor, no matter how reckless the driving was. And I just think that's horrendous. So that was brought to my attention from a fellow in Berkeley County who lost his wife or somebody. It wasn't just distracted driving, it was hugely reckless. And she was killed. And for a misdemeanor, you can get just home detention or even just no crossed on it, which is kind of an outlier. It just doesn't seem to be right.
And is it a possibility to create more serious consequences when you are caught on your cell phone? Like,
That's my legislative proposal, is to make that a felony. With leeway, you know, for the judges to see, you know, what were the reasons for the death or even serious injury, but to have just a misdemeanor, to have somebody's life taken driving just seems to be way off of the chart.
I don't know what, you know, fines are right now for getting caught using your cell phone, but so let's say it's $50, you know, that might not stop a lot of people, but if I heard my girlfriend just got stopped and now she has to pay like $500, that might stop a lot of people.
Well, we just need some penalties for that. Problem is, when you put in increased penalties for using cell phones and things like that, it's the state police that have to make those arrests. That increases their workload. And you can't just put in the penalties. You also have to put in funding for more law enforcement.
Right.
And there's Rob. And one of the other interesting things about West Virginia, most West Virginians don't know this. There is no county road system in West Virginia. We're one of the few states that all the roads are either state, interstate, or municipal. There's just no county road system. So everything on the local level is either state or municipal. And of course, with West Virginia being so mountainous, you know, the cost per road is really, really high. But more information I can tell you for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we went to the Martinsburg CEC presentation about all the
Mhm.
see, are they gonna use this like for airport projects maybe, or
So-
projects overlap with the money?
Yeah, they're-
Miller.
Yeah, there's room for overlap for sure. So, in the Martinsburg Gateway Plan, I know there were a couple countermeasures that are used for pedestrian safety and traffic calming that are called like bulb outs, right? So it's where you have the curve comes out at the intersection like a bump, or might call it bump outs, right? So it kind of narrows the vision for the car slows down, it lessens the distance the pedestrian has to travel. to get across. We could use data from the safety action plan and like the sketches the CDC has done for that. And the city of Martinsburg, we could all come together and apply for a grant and get that awarded. Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that, I mean, in my opinion, like, I think that, I might be going out on a limb here, in my opinion, Ken's starting to smile. I feel like the governor's office, the hub office, which does a lot of the grant development. Now they don't like every idea that I have, but I feel like they're trying to find these federal opportunities and find good projects that fit and get it all linked up. So yeah, so that would, in a roundabout way, yes. So what Jim showed on Edwin Miller Boulevard, that profile isn't overly prescriptive. It just shows, let's see. So like if you're having, so if you have pedestrians, well, you know, Edwin Miller Boulevard doesn't have any sidewalks except for that stamp of Audi, right, or Aldi, excuse me. So it's like you can add sidewalks, you can do things like that. That would help pedestrian safety. You can add night lights, street lights. Sorry. My daughter last night became a senior. She's a drum major next year with Martinsburg band, marching band, and they had this whole senior presentation. And it just made me think about when she was a kid. So streetlights. Streetlights can improve safety. So some of the things CC again, we could package it all together.
It's like, well, we follow the wish list.
Yeah, some of it was,
You're gonna actually like be able to do intersection 7-Eleven, just out of the King Street, something, you know what I mean?
some of them, yeah, some of them require further study because it just, and so like, yeah, so you bring up a good point. So do we have, I don't think it's in that presentation, but we actually did look at Winchester Avenue from just south of Mall Drive, north through town. So you're talking about 7-Eleven,
Yeah.
like making a left there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Monte King, that
Yeah.
area.
So it's just something that has to be studied. So
I think I do have that.
so there are accepted traffic engineering practices that US DOT, state DOTs adopt. And because the state owns and maintains the roads and assumes the liability for them, they follow these design standards and guidelines in how the roads are maintained and evaluated. So if they color outside of those lines too far and something bad happens, they're liable. So that's why, you know, while you look at it, you're like, okay, I think I could put on my left blinker and I could make it.
Yeah.
Even though there's a do not, you know, there's a no left placard hanging on the arm off the mast.
Yeah.
It just has to be studied, or like they look at the turn radius.
Yeah.
Trucks do it,
Yeah.
buses do it,
Yeah.
school buses do it. Not that, you know, it just has to go through that level of scrutiny. And some of those grants can cover, oh yeah,
Yeah.
heck yeah. Some of those grants can cover all of that, where it's like you apply for it, it's like, okay, you've got X years to spend this money. You can do planning, engineering, right away, construction, the whole thing. So, yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, it's gonna
What
be,
about roads being turned from what, there's some one-way roads I've noticed in Martinsburg, would they ever be made two-way or not? That's not.
Yeah, I mean,
DOT.
there were old designs, right, Ken? I mean, like, there were old designs. So Mike Cavell used to be the city engineer for Martinsburg. He told me there were old designs for a lot of one-way couplets all through town that never became, but, you know, if they're staying evaluated, they could. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna, when interwoven comes online, it's gonna be very challenging. Exciting, but challenging. Yeah, oh, my my wife teaches at South Middle, and her first comment to your comment about like, why can't we keep them out? Yeah, just people saying, she's like, where are the teachers gonna come from? She's like, they better give a discount for teachers.
Yeah.
And those, I was like, yeah, they should.
So that we section isn't so much in Martinsburg as the one in Ransom, the one that costs at various near Home Depot.
Okay, yes, Fairfax.
Yeah, because
Uh-huh.
he was killed the other day with a dog, and a couple of years ago, somebody else was killed because traffic comes out, and it's just like the whole intersection needs to be rethought, but you're aware of. Too bad
I
or
think
something.
it's more fatalities than what you mentioned, but yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have this on?
You know.
Is it-
No, well, but that's actually a comment that I said earlier that we received comments, and that was, so we have the high injury network goes to the railroad overpass near Flowing Springs Park, but it doesn't go all the way up to the Fairfax intersection. But yeah, so President's Point's going in there.
Section 11. There's always somebody walking or.
So you would be connecting where that red line is up here, up to, sorry, come over one to your left. Oops. Yeah, so that's Route 9. And the intersection
here's
we're
Route
talking about
9.
where that red dot is. If you keep following Route 9, oops, no, sorry.
This way,
Yeah, right there.
right there, yeah,
Yep.
okay.
So that's where Kohl's, Home Depot,
Yeah.
that's Potomac Marketplace. Yeah, so they're building President's Point behind Home Depot. And that area is definitely on DOH's radar. They've considered a couple different potential innovative designs in that area. There is a lot of growth, like you said, that's happening. One of the other things, I mean, we're here, got the room, we're being frank. One of the other issues that is that you heard the delegate talk about workforce with state troopers. I can tell you that West Virginia DOH is depleted of staff. Like in their one division, their traffic division, I think there's something like 30 some folks short. In the planning division, they're 20 some folks short. Everybody's doing multiple jobs. And so there was a couple years ago, there was going to be a corridor study right at that intersection. They were looking at some really wild redesign near there, something that's called an R-cut, which there's only one of those in the state. It has to do with pulling traffic over to one side, letting it pass, and it reverses and goes the other way. Excuse me. But there's been so much staff turnover. It's almost as if it was a courthouse that got blown away, like it got wiped out. But that intersection is definitely, yeah, we can talk about extending the high injury network.
Yeah.
I think that bears merit for sure.
Yeah.
Especially now that Fairfax Boulevard's connected too. Fairfax Boulevard
Yeah.
Phase 2 is connected.
Right in here.
Everybody uses that as a shortcut too, through that Oakley between those neighborhoods
Yeah,
and
they
get into
figured that
Flowing
out.
Springs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like one little turn you have to make.
Okay. And then
Yeah, I think the HOA is putting in speed bumps though, which I don't, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of speed bumps, well, since you brought that up.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of pro and con to that. From a technical standpoint, are they effective or are they just annoying?
Speed bumps, I mean, they get you to slow down. You can do them, you can do things like speed tables, which they have at like Hillsborough's. I don't know if you've been through Hillsborough recently, right? So they have speed tables where you can go like 20, 25 and, it's not uncomfortable, but you're slowing down and you
Right.
kind of go over it and I think if it were evaluated, maintenance facilities or maintenance trucks, so, snow removal, ice control, they would be able to go over that without bottoming out or the blade getting caught or something like that. Because that's a big concern with a lot of treatments. People will say, well, if speeding's really a problem, or this is really a problem, you should just do this. But if it's something that is overly restrictive, or could even be viewed as punitive towards like highway maintenance, it actually will cost more money to the taxpayers in the long run because the maintenance goes up. So I think they can be useful. It just depends on the context where they're applied.
Well, the reason I bring it up is, and I'm familiar with this, the town of Hagerstown is just going nuts with speed bumps. Of course, they have a huge traffic. One of the ways is they decided to deal with it is put in speed bumps everywhere. And they do slow traffic down, but, and there's a difference between what you said and just,
Yeah, those are pretty, they're not subtle, right? They're not subtle. Yeah. I used to live in Wildfire Ridge off of Jenny Wren. And that's what that HOA did, because they're the cheap ones, right? You just pop them in there. And I mean, it's drastic. You don't
it's
just
fairly low cost to put them in. Yeah.
Right. Correct. So, yeah, I think, maybe more permanent things maybe would ease with that transition and still accomplish what they want, and not be so jolting to the driver.
Speaking of traffic problems, let me mention two things. One is you mentioned about Edwin Miller Boulevard. I travel that a lot, and I noticed where there's not a traffic light, the getting back on Edwin Miller Boulevard from some of these side roads, it just takes forever. I know at Aldi's, it's easy to get into Aldi's, but getting out on Edwin Miller Boulevard, and when I go to the bank on Edwin Miller Boulevard, it's really, really difficult. And the only solution I would think on that is more traffic lights, but then that's not going to go down well to the driving public either.
Yeah, well, as Jim mentioned, there are plans for, well, there's one you've probably seen on Lutz Avenue up there that's getting installed. There's another one that's going to go in on Courthouse. It is tough to make lefts at an unsignalized or an uncontrolled intersection. The hope is that every time that a new signal is installed, they being the state, looks at these signals, how they communicate with each other, how they're coordinated with the signals next to them. So I believe there's a system that could be or is being considered to be in place, and these signals can be coordinated and timed with each other to where traffic can flow a little bit better than each signal being independent of itself.
The other issue I just wanted to bring up, and this has been going on for years, in Berkeley Springs, Route 2522 or 220, whatever it is, on the north side going into town, and Route 9 on the south side going out of town. The town of Berkeley Springs, well, actually, it's the town of Bay. I think call it Berkeley Springs as a post office. The town has local police that, because the speed limit there drastically changes in a very short period of time. And it's almost like an old Southern sheriff thing where they get the outsiders. I remember not too many years ago, I got a ticket for going 30 in a 25 mile zone, and I just passed the 40 mile, marker, the 40 mile per hour marker. And it's like, oh, come on. It seems like that's an ongoing problem, and it's a prevalent practice of the town of Bay.
Yeah. Hey, so I can tell you, I've only gotten one speeding ticket in my life, and it was the city of Ranson on Route 9.
There you go.
I got popped, and I was like, time out. Who pulled me over?
Where'd you come from?
You know where I came from? I actually came from a public meeting on traffic safety. That was actually 5 years ago. This was like
that because I was leaving Berkeley Springs from a public meeting. Had to take it was on a Saturday night, and got pulled over. And so I asked the I was going to say trooper, the town policeman. I said, "Oh, okay. It doesn't say on the ticket what the fine is." And he said, "Well, you have to call into the courthouse or to the town hall on Monday, and they'll tell you." And I called. It was $250, and I thought, "Holy crap!"
Wow.
I just,
Yeah.
something's not right. Something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah.
I don't think mine was that drastic, but
Slow you down.
I was speeding.
Well, and I was technically speeding, but I thought, I'm stuck, but boy, I'm real careful when I go in now to Berkeley Springs,
Yeah.
which I guess is the point.
Yeah.
Well, so that's all my speed demon stories. Any other questions or comments or problem areas?
I will say, Matt, there will be comprehension with distracted driving. One of the best things that seems to remove distracted driving is traffic calming methods. Whether it's, speed humps or tables or roundabouts or ball bounce or whatever that, forces the driver to pay attention, or they're gonna bump their car into a curb or something like that.
I will confess that a roundabout makes me focus intensely because to this day, I get confused with roundabouts.
No, Ken's right. So really, a wide lane and a wide shoulder, that is like the invitation for speeding, distracted, and aggressive driving, right? But that's what everybody thinks is like, that's what's safe, because look, I have all this room. When in reality, what makes you a little antsy, sorry, I just had this conversation with my mom, because she also does not like roundabouts. I'm like, oh, well, actually. But that kind of uncomfortableness when you're driving is actually your heightened awareness of everything around you, and it makes you behave drive-wise in a way that is, is a little bit safer, is a little bit more aware than when you're kind of more comfortable, kind of lackadaisical. It's like, I know this area, I know this way, and I can go a little bit faster. Whoops, I'm in the city of Ransom. I didn't know that. Right. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, so what are some traffic calming measures that like state DOT has employed? So bulb outs are in Charlestown, right, down on West Virginia 51, which is Washington Street. There's some on Queen Street. There's speed tables as examples at Shepherd University, right in front of Shaw and Thatcher Hall. There's a lot to draw from. So I would love that as a result of this, if municipalities or the counties and the state, we can get together and come up with some plans for some of these corridors or gateways like what the city already did, and get some of these grants. Because I mean, like, they're cutting ribbons on big projects, right? I mean, Suzanne and that, like, big stuff. And there's no reason why we can't take advantage of that here in this area. And we've benefited from it, right? So Elaine's on the call, we've gotten huge grants, multi-million-dollar grants for a new transit center in downtown Martinsburg as a result of that. So, yeah.
Are there any grants in the works for and I've got a personal interest in Route 9, or it's from Martinsburg to Edgesville, particularly the long discussed bypass.
So, so every time that, so this is the inside baseball, I guess. So every time USDOT issues a new, we call them NOFOs, but notice of funding opportunity for these large grants. So right now, the one, and it closes, I think, May 6th. I think. It's mega, infra, and rural. Don't ask me to explain the acronyms because I can't pull them apart. But every time a major NOFO for these big projects, big discretionary grant projects come out, West Virginia DOT will always reach out to the 8 MPOs in the state. So we're one: Charleston, Huntington, Fayetteville, Beckley, Parkersburg, Morgantown, Wheeling, us. And say, if you have any ideas for projects that meet these criteria, please let us know. We will consider submitting a grant for it. So the state's eligible to submit up to 3 around there for each type. This last round, I said we should consider Route 9, taking the Pell study and looking at taking that to the next level in 2021. I don't think that was accepted. I don't think it's gonna be an application submitted this time.
Okay.
Those grants, are highly competitive and they require a good bit. You almost have to have, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like buying $1,000 lottery ticket. You know, like you have to have resources to put together a really competitive grant, to do the benefit cost analysis, to meet all the technical requirements. So it's tough for a city, an MPO, a regional council, for some of those to really get it all together. And that's why we like to say, okay, the state already has all this, the state has the expertise. Let's see if we can convince the state of its value. They didn't take it this round. Maybe they'll take it next round. I do think, though, that they put in a design study or route line, which is the next step. Yeah, which is the next step. And I had asked about what was going on with our grant application. That's why I kind of jokingly asked you about the governor's 15-point plan. You know, I didn't know he was in town. I hadn't heard of that, you know.
I didn't either, Jeff.
I hadn't seen a map. You know, so anyway, yeah. So for us, for our small organization, we have it on our radar. We're saying this is something that needs to be considered. Sometimes too, when those grants don't work out, grants of the past, you know, if a member of the state highway department really likes a certain type of project or certain project, rather than meet the spirit of the grant, they'll try to get the project squeezed into the grant itself. And so I think there were some bridge projects across the state, maybe like Market Street and Weirton, and some other ones that maybe hadn't been awarded in the past. They're like, we're gonna see if this qualifies, we're just gonna try it because we were known at this point.
I appreciate that.
Yep, no problem.
Well, if nobody else has a question, I've got one. Matt, I'm just curious as to how long you've been doing this and what prompted you to, what were you doing before you had this position? What prompted you to do that?
Oh, yeah. So when I was a kid, my dad, because I wanted it, drove to the DOH Jackson County office in Ripley and got me a 3-piece county road map of all of Jackson County. And I had it in my bedroom and it covered the whole wall, top and bottom. So I've always loved maps. And I got into this position. I left the private sector after I got my master's degree because I just got married and my wife's from this area. Now we wanted to start a family, and so this job was the first job I could get that didn't work weekends and late nights, and it's been good to me. So
You're good at it.
yeah, well, thank you.
So now you're working nights.
Sorry, I'm sick. I'm usually more guarded than my new parents.
That's fascinating. You're interested in maps because my minor in college was geography and maps fascinates me too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, alrighty. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming.
All right, well, we'll have a good evening, and then, yeah, if you had a choice, sign your sheet.
I guess
Hey, have a great night. Thanks for joining us.
I should have
Hey,
stopped.
thanks. No problem. Good job.
Yep, take it easy.
All right. Bye.
Yeah.
Yep.
See,
All right.
bye, Elaine.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Bye.
Take care.
Close that.
How do I stop the recording?
Well, Matt, I actually learned some things tonight, which is always a plus.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Excuse me. Whew.